This is again one of the most anticipated launch in the Clementi area, and the reason is simple. Unlike the previous launches here, Faber Residence actually sits within 1 kilometer of Nan Hua Primary. So for many families, that is a game changer, and it sets this project apart right from the start. Faber Residence is a low-rise development with a total of 399 units ranging from 2 to 5 bedroom layouts, and for the land size, right, is about 25,000 square meters. So to put this into perspective, right, Whistler Grand, which is about 19,000 square meters, it houses about 716 units. Twinview, which is about 16,000 square meters, housing about 520 units. And for the larger developments like Park Rivera and Park Clementi, which is about 50,000 over square meters, they have easily doubled or tripled the number of units within the same project. So when you look at Faber Residence with only 399 units on a plot of this size, it tells you straight away that this is going to be a lot less dense, much more exclusive, with a very different living environment as compared to their neighbors. And adding on to that, right, this project is set within a 2-story semi-detached landed enclave, which means you won't see any tall towers rising around it, and with new builds in this area capped at 2.5 stories or roughly about 12 meters, the surroundings will continue to feel low-rise and private. And I will talk a little bit more about the unit mix and what it represents later in this video, because I feel that is an important angle for buyers. So now let's look at the land price. This site at Faber Walk was sold as a government land sale. It was awarded to Goco Land together with Hong Leong and TID for about $350 million, and that works out to be about $900 per square foot per plot ratio. To give some context, the bid was actually around 9% higher than the second bid, which shows that the developers had really strong conviction about this site. And based on these numbers, the estimated break-even price comes in at around $1,682 per square foot. And if you've been following the new launches, right, you will know that this is actually on the lower side as compared to the rest of Clementi Avenue 1 sites, which were closer to about $1,250 per square foot per plot ratio for just the land cost alone. So right away, right, this tells us that the developers have some breathing room to price quite competitively, and this is going to be very interesting to watch once the actual launch prices are released. And when we compare to the surroundings, right, Whistler Grand was sold only in 2018 at about $800 per square foot per plot ratio. So we fast forward 6 years later, right, Faber Residence is actually sold at $900 per square foot per plot ratio. So the question is, does it mean that we are getting a chance to buy at 6 years ago pricing? Which brings us to the next point. What other projects were recently sold around $900 per square foot per plot ratio, and how are they priced today? So Lentor Central, which was sold at $982 per square foot per plot ratio, it was averaging around $2,222 per square foot. Springleaf, which was sold at $905 per square foot per plot ratio, it has an average price of $2,189 per square foot. So with Faber Residence coming in at $900 per square foot per plot ratio, I feel that it's actually closer to Springleaf's land price and noticeably lower than Lentor Central. Just by looking at where those projects are transacting today, it gives us a clear benchmark of how competitive Faber can be positioned and the potential upside buyers might be looking at. Here is the unit mix, right? And also what's very interesting is that the 2-bedders over here, the smallest one will be a 2-bed 2-bath layout, which makes it more practical for couples or actually small families. And another thing to note over here, right, is that the 3-bedder unit types are actually 50% of the whole project. And when you add in the 4 and 5 bedroom units, right, it is quite obvious that this project focuses on own-stay buyers, especially for families who want to live in a project in a private and low-rise enclave. When we look at the neighbours profile around Faber Residence, one thing actually really stands out, right? The owner-occupancy rate is actually very high here. And this would mean that most of the homes are lived in by families themselves rather than being rented out. Because of that, right, there's also very limited supply of rental units in this area, whether it's 2-bed, 3-bed, 4-bed, or even 5-bed. So if you're buying to stay, right, it gives you a very stable environment without the high turnover that you might see in other condo clusters lah. And with Faber Residence being the only GFA harmonized project here, buyers can also expect more efficient layouts, no more wasted space like aircon ledges or double volume ceilings, which most of the projects here do have double volume ceilings on their top floor units. So overall, right, it's actually a very low density, family centric enclave when long-term demand is likely to stay strong. So let's look at the indicative price matrix. This is not official. This is something that I actually did up for myself. So for the two-bedder starting from 646 square feet, you're looking at entry prices of 1.3 million if it launches at around 2,100 per square foot. So moving on to the three-bedders, which is almost 50% of the project, they are likely to start from 1.6 million and it could go all the way up to 2.6 million, depending on the size and floors. And for the four-bedders over here, it could possibly start at around 2.3 million to about 3.2 million range. Now here is the key takeaway, right? If you're able to enter into a pure residential project like Faber Residence at around $2,100 per square foot, even though it's not directly near to an MRT, right, I feel that the chances of losing money is actually pretty low. And when you consider that new launch executive condos today are already transacting at 1,800 per square foot, an entry point of 2,100 PSF for a private condo in Clementi does look like a very safe option. So now after we look at the indicative price matrix, right, let's put Faber Residence into context with some other recent government land sale sites. The Faber site was actually secured at 900 per square foot per plot ratio, which translates to a potential launch range of 2,100 per square foot to $2,400 per square foot. So now when we compare that to Dairy Farm Walk, right, which is sold at $1,020 per square foot per plot ratio, Lakeside Drive, $1,132 per square foot per plot ratio, Chuan Grove, $1,376 per square foot per plot ratio, and of course our Bayshore, $1,388 per square foot per plot ratio. These projects are looking at a potential launch of $2,004 all the way to $2,800 per square foot. So in other words, right, Faber is likely to be one of the last few opportunities to enter the OCR at close to 2,100 per square foot before the new launches start normalizing at a much higher level. So now that we've gone through two key factors of why buyers will be drawn to Faber Residence, I think firstly is the low density but large land plot living environment and own stay unit mix, and secondly the relatively low land cost, which could potentially translate into very attractive entry price. And then now let's talk about what I think is the biggest draw would be Nan Hua Primary. So the table over here, right, actually shows the average take-up rate for Nan Hua Primary in the year 2025. And I realized that it is the same throughout many years of P1 registration in the past. And as you can see, even at phase 2C, right, the number of applicants far exceeds the number of available vacancies. And that just shows that how intense the demand is and how parents will actually go great lengths to secure a place at Nan Hua Primary. So for families living within 1 kilometer of Nan Hua Primary isn't just about convenience, it is about dramatically improving the odds of getting in. And that is why projects like Faber Residence, which have this advantage, will always carry a strong premium and see stable demand. And one common concern that people might have about Faber Residence is that, there's no MRT nearby. And it is true, there isn't a MRT that is nearby. But what you really do have, right, is a fully sheltered walkway all the way to a bus stop, which directly links you to multiple major bus service, 201, 97, 154, and 197. So for example, right, for bus 97, it brings you all the way to places like Vivo, Marina Bay Sands, Promenade, or even Suntec. And bus 154, it actually runs all the way to Botanic Gardens and Paya Lebar as well. Bus 197 runs to town and through places like Bugis, Kallang, and even Bedok. So while MRT is not at your doorstep, right, the connectivity here is still quite strong, especially for those who actually commute into the city or study at institutions like NUS or SIF nearby. Plus, there is a Pandan Reservoir MRT on the Jurong Regional Line that's coming up, and accessibility is only going to be improving over time. So one of the objections that people might raise about Faber Residence is that it's near the expressway, and I get it, right? The noise and the views are always a concern when you're close to the highway. But if we are actually looking from some market data from Park Clementi's, right, which actually TOP in the year of 2023, and also have some stacks facing the expressway, and these units are still performing very strongly. In fact, some of the highest profits came from the expressway-facing stacks, with one of the 3-bedroom clocking about 789,000. I know it's a bit small, but you can reach out to me if you want this information. And that is about $748 per square foot profit in just 3 to 4 years. So while expressway facing might sound like a drawback on paper, it is an unblocked view, and the resale numbers have shown that buyers are still willing to pay good money, especially for practical layouts and a good entry price. So it's not a deal breaker that people sometimes assume it to be. However, I do have one piece of good news. None of the blocks at Faber Residence are actually facing the expressway, and on top of that, right, there is also a distance buffer of 24 meters from the AYE. So while expressway proximity might sound like a concern at first, the site layout and buffer make sure that the residential blocks are kept away, which really helps with the noise and the overall comfort of living. So one more thing that makes Faber Residence interesting is the priority booking system, which is here again. We are seeing it repeat from Springleaf Residence. So if you're ex-owner or current owner of Guaco Lian or Hong Leong projects, you can actually qualify for what is the loyalty purchase, and that gives you priority access on booking day, which can make a big difference if the demand is high. And also, like we've seen in Springleaf Residence, they also gave additional 1% discount for loyalty purchases. And it also extends one tier further, meaning to say that even if it's not you, but your immediate family members like your spouse, your parents, your siblings, or your children, they can also benefit from this priority. So in short, right, if you or your family have ever owned one of these listed properties over here, you are already in a strong position to secure a good stack at Faber Residence ahead of the general balloting crowd. And if you're unclear whether you qualify, you can just drop me a DM, I'll clarify it for you. And that wraps up my part 1 of my introduction for Faber Residence. Do stay tuned for part 2, where I'll be doing a full video breakdown, again including the floor plan, stack analysis, and also perhaps comparing it to other resale projects in the vicinity, and which units I would think that will offer the best value. In the meantime, the targeted preview is actually on 3rd of October, and the launch date is targeted to be 18th of October. If there are any changes, I'll let you know. Very likely these dates will be the same as Penrith, but let's see how it goes. When I have more information, I will drop my part 2 video. And if you like the latest updates, you can also join my Telegram channel or drop me a WhatsApp at my number over here, and I'll share the early information the moment it's out. I'll see you in the next video.